Chapter 29, A Major Leaguer. In 1945, we were a Jim Crow nation. It was nothing to be proud of, but that's the way it was. In the South, everything was segregated: schools, buses, restaurants, hotels, even phone booths. The rest of the country wasn't as blatant about it, but there was plenty of separation and prejudice. Those who approved of Jim Crow segregation said that things were separate but equal. They were separate, all right, but they were rarely equal, and they certainly were not on the ball field. When it came to the national pastime, which is what baseball is called, there were two major leagues, the minor leagues, and there were the Negro leagues, for ball players of color. The major leaguers played in fine ballparks, traveled first class, and slept in decent hotels. The Negro leaguers? Well, they put up with a lot. Shoddy conditions, no ballparks of their own. They rented what they could find, travel any way they could make it, and usually lower pay, except for the incredible Satchel Paige, who in 1942 managed to make more money than anyone in any league. One thing the Negro leagues did have in abundance was talent. When black players played all-star games against white teams, they usually won. Just think about it, and you can see how insane the system was. All those good ball players and no one letting them play in the majors. There were plenty of whites who understood that, and there were plenty of whites without prejudice. One of them was the general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers, Branch Rickey. Rickey decided he was going to change baseball. He was going to make it the national pastime for all Americans. But he knew it wouldn't be easy. Fighting prejudice never is. Rickey was the right man for the job. He had founded baseball's system of farm teams back in the 1920s. That means he came up with the idea of taking over minor league teams, which had been independently owned just like the major league clubs, and using them to develop ball players for the major leagues. Branch Rickey was used to scouting good players. He knew how to pick them. He was also a shrewd businessman. Black ball players then were a pool of inexpensive talent. They played an exciting, hustling kind of baseball, and they would bring a huge new black audience to the majors. If Rickey was going to change baseball and some of the nation's attitudes by integrating the Brooklyn Dodgers, he knew he would have to find a ball player who was not only a great athlete, but even more important, a great person. When he found Jack Roosevelt Robinson, he had just the man he was looking for. Jackie Robinson was a spectacular athlete. He had earned letters and trophies in 4 sports at the University of California at Los Angeles, or UCLA. He was very smart and did well in school. And he had the strength to fight for his beliefs. As an officer in the Army, Robinson refused to move when a bus driver asked him to sit in the back of the bus, where blacks were expected to sit. That got Jackie in trouble, but he wouldn't back down. He faced a court-martial, a military court, for disobedience. But the young lieutenant had acted within his rights. The Army dropped the charges against him. Some people thought him a troublemaker, but Branch Rickey was impressed. Here was a man of courage, he believed. Rickey asked Robinson to come to New York. He said he wanted to talk about a new Negro team. Then, in his office, Branch Rickey told Jackie the truth. He wanted him to break baseball's color line. Both men knew the first black ball player in the major leagues wouldn't have it easy. Rickey told Robinson that if he wanted the job, no matter what happened to him, he had to promise not to fight back. He would have to take abuse and hold his tongue. At all times, he would have to be a gentleman. Mr. Rickey, do you want a ball player who's afraid to fight back? I want a ball player with guts enough not to fight back, said Rickey. Robinson had never backed away from a fight. He knew if someone insulted him, it would be very difficult to do what Rickey asked, to turn the other cheek. But he agreed. He gave his word. He was going to do something bigger than anything he had done before. It was more important than his feelings. It was for his people and for all people. The two men talked for 3 hours. Still, neither of them realized how much courage Jackie Robinson would actually need. He had tough times ahead of him. He was going to be spiked, spat on, sent death threats, hit with pitches, and called awful names. How would you have responded? Branch Rickey began by sending Jackie Robinson to Brooklyn's leading farm team, the Montreal Royals. The Royals manager, Clay Hopper, had grown up with prejudice. He had never had a black friend. He begged Branch Rickey not to make him coach Jackie Robinson. Rickey knew he was a good coach. He told him to do his job. By the end of the season, Hopper had learned a lesson. Most prejudice comes from ignorance. He told Robinson, "You're a real ball player and a gentleman. It's been wonderful having you on the team." On April 15, 1947, Jackie Robinson, up for Montreal, batted in Brooklyn for the first time as a major leaguer. He was put out 4 times that day. He didn't do much better the rest of the week. Had Rickey made a mistake? Then, when the Dodgers went to Philadelphia to play the Phillies, even Rickey was stunned by what happened. The Phillies manager, Ben Chapman, spewed hate language and encouraged his players to do the same. At no time in my life had I heard racial venom and dugout abuse to match the abuse that Ben sprayed on Robinson that night, said one of Branch Rickey's aides. I could scarcely believe my ears, said Robinson. Jackie Robinson took a deep breath and kept his word. The abuse wasn't all verbal. Runners were sliding and cutting him with their spikes. Pitchers were throwing at his head. It was too much for his teammates, even those who hadn't wanted a black player on their club. Sometimes actions bring unexpected results. The poor sportsmanship of some other teams brought the Dodgers together. They were behind their new teammate now. Soon Robinson was swinging and connecting, and when it came to base running, hardly anyone had ever done it the way Jackie Robinson did. He gave pitchers the jitters, and when he stole home, well, have you ever seen anyone steal home? There isn't much in baseball that's more exciting. Robinson was a fantastic base stealer. In his rookie season, Jackie Robinson finished first in the league in stolen bases and second in runs scored. He tied for the team lead in home runs. Dodgers fans began cheering and cheering. The nation's most important sports paper, the Sporting News, which had said that Rickey was unwise to bring a black man to the majors, named him Rookie of the Year. In September, the Brooklyn Dodgers won the National League pennant, and at the end of the season, Branch Rickey told his star, "Jackie, you're on your own now. You can be yourself." Robinson no longer had to keep quiet, and he didn't. Jackie Robinson had won the affection and respect of his fellow ballplayers and the nation. He was the first. He took the punishment. He made it easy for those who followed. Baseball was now the national pastime for all people.